Hey everybody, today we're going to take a chunk of basswood and turn it into the Grinch. Let's make a Grinch. We're going to start out today with this piece of basswood that is cut on the diagonal out of a 2x2 piece of basswood. It's just a little bit shy. It's like 1 7/8 on these two sides. Probably was just a little bit off center when it was cut, but it was out of a 2x2, and this piece is about 4 7/16 or 112 millimeters long. And if you want the other side dimensions on this one in metric is about 48 millimeters. So 48 millimeters by 122, or 1 3/8 by 1 3/8 by a little over 4 3/8. Okay. Now to start this, other than knowing the size of the block of wood, and that really isn't even that important. For dimensions for this project, all I really need to know is half. So what I mean by that is you take half of the length, and we'll make a mark there. But before we do that, even these sharp corners on here are just kind of in the way, and they got to go anyway. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my knife and knock these corners off. Okay, and then we're going to just knock a little bit of each one of these corners off, just so as we're flipping it around, it's not catching on our hands, it's not digging into our hands. It's also just kind of a little way to warm up if you haven't been carving. It's your first carving of the day. Okay, now that we have that done, let's measure our block of wood. It was 4 3/8. So we're going to make a mark at 2 3/16, roughly. 2 1/4, close enough. Okay, now I'm going to do that right in the center on this peak. Let me knock the edges off here. Just make this a little more rounded to start with. And the reason I'm doing that is simply just makes it easier to draw my next step. Okay, so we got our mark halfway down the length of the wood. Doesn't matter what size, you could do this out of 1.5 inch, cut diagonal, or any size. And basically just take half of the distance. And that's going to be the bottom side of the brim around the hat. So I want it to sit a little bit at an angle. So we're going to go up a little bit, not a lot. You know, if we went straight over here, so maybe go up 1/8 of an inch or 3/16, and over here we'll come down about that much. And you see our line goes across here at an angle. And that to me is a little bit too steep. I think we're just going to kind of sketch this in. We'll come a little shy of that line and a little above this one over here. I want it to be at a little bit of an angle, but not too drastic on this one. Something like that. I don't know if that's showing up. I can draw that with my pen also, just so it shows up a little better on camera. So half the distance of the block, slightly angled line. Now we're just going to come above that. Oh, I don't know, maybe 5/16, 3/8 of an inch. Make another line that's just parallel to that. And when you're drawing, you can get out a ruler and you can draw a nice straight line, but that's not necessary either. especially early on in a carving like this. These lines are guidelines. They get you started, and what you carve is what you get anyway. So they don't have to be perfect lines. Okay, and before we do anything else for marking out, I'm going to go ahead and define those with my knife. Just going to start, I'm going to angle slightly, not much, but I just don't want to dig under it. So I'm just angling away from that line just a little bit. And just going to kind of go across that line. Make sure you get your fingers out of the way as you come across. Well, everybody should be wearing their cut resistant gloves, but it's cut resistant, not cut proof. Do the same on the top. Just follow that line. And rather than slipping off the edge, and that's one way, like if you had your fingers here, you get to the edge, you'd have quite a bit of force, push right into there, it might cut through those gloves. Get your fingers behind, and then what I like to do is when you get close to an edge like that, rather than just continuing to push the knife across, stop and rock it down and finish your cut that way. It's just safer. Okay, then we're going to come into those cuts all the way around. And just kind of defining where that hat line is. Just coming right up to that line. Just to start to get that hat line to pop out. Okay. And we'll probably go over it all again here. I like to just cut up to it. And using that as a guide, push down to get the chip out of there. And go across the top doing the same thing. Okay, so that's step number whatever it is we're on. And then we're going to, now that we have that defined, one of my kind of pet peeves, I guess, if you will, when looking at carvings that have been carved on a diagonal or on a split piece of wood like this, is that when you're done, you can still see that triangle shape. So the best way to avoid that is before you get too far into any detail or anything like that, is just take this corner back. We don't need the corner for anything. It'll help shape the face a little bit when we get down here, but it's still sticking out too far. So let's just get pretty aggressive here, and we'll take off quite a bit of that corner. Like I said, this will improve the overall look of your carving when it's done, because you won't have that triangle shape so much. Kind of round that off, round that point of that triangle off. Come back down our hat line, do the same thing. You know, here's a good example of that. Is that a little washed out? Let's see if we can turn this light down a bit. So you can see here, if you look at you got the triangle shape here, and there it's starting to round out. Okay, And we're going to do that down below the hat line as well. Take quite a bit off. We might want to not go quite as deep so we have some for the nose and face structure. We can take off a fairly good amount. We'll cut back up to the hat line. See how that hat line, that just kind of, it defines, gives you a reference for everything in this carving. The reason I like to do that at this point is when we get down here to the face and the cheeks, we really don't want to remove much material because it's already kind of going back. We want some rounded cheeks here, and it's hard enough to get that with this shape of wood. So I want to, again, before I get too carried away with getting any detail in there, I like to get rid of saw marks and get down to, so I don't have to worry about that later. Like if I get my details in and then you realize you didn't cut saw marks off and you really wanted to get all the saw marks off, then you may or may not have enough leeway in your carving to get that out of there. So just, I like to do that right away. Get it over with. And we got all the saw marks off, except on this band, but I know that's going to all come down. So that's, you can see how far that's sticking out. We want to bring that back as well. We don't want the band to be pointed like the triangle block was. So we're just going to cut that way back. We're not going to cut it completely away because we need that there. Okay. And I'll just go ahead and get the saw marks and pen lines off of there just by shaving a little bit. Okay. Now that we've done that, we need to, we don't have much of a lip here, so we know that this needs to come back more above and below it. Let's make a stop cut. Come down to it, clean it up. I think I've mentioned this in my other videos. Especially if you're just getting started and you're excited to carve something and get all those details in there and have it be real nice carving. But don't forget the step that will make a big difference. Don't worry about the details right away. Worry about the shape. You know, look at your subject that you're trying to carve, whether it's pictures from the internet or something you have in your hand that you're just trying to copy. Look at the overall shape of it. Go for getting those general shapes there first and get that to where you like it, where it looks how you want it. And then put your details inside of that framework. But if you start right away, you go, oh, I gotta get the eyes in there. Well, if your eyes, if the cheeks and the eye sockets aren't formed, your eyes will just be kind of buggy sitting out on top and won't look right. So that's what I try to do anyway, is I try to just kind of think of it as you want just a shape without any detail on it when you're at the end of that stage. Like here, I'm basing everything off of this hat brim line. So I've got that kind of smoothed out. I got all the saw marks off. We'll clean up here where it kind of tore it out. I like to kind of go around, and any little ridges that you can, not necessary at this point. It doesn't affect your end result, but to me it makes the process of sketching things out a little bit easier. If you get rid of a lot of these little ridges, have a smoother surface to draw on. Now, we're talking about the Grinch here. If you've seen the cartoon version or the movie version, most of the time the Grinch will have like a small dome shaped top of the head, and then it kind of curves way out at the bottom around just below his eyes, or right about at his eyes, way out to the side and down to the kind of a point. So let's make the hat first. And the reason I do that is I think about that shape of kind of his smaller domed head. And I'm going to come in here and draw that shape. Now this won't be a visible cut line when we're done, but it helps kind of picture what you're going for. Because that hat is going to kind of conform to that at that point. And then if we come down here, and then it kind of comes out to the side, kind of like that. And I can draw that in with the pen so you guys can see it better. And his hat's tilted a little bit, so it might be a little longer over here on this side. Something like that. Okay? And then what I like to do from there is I use this shape up here where his head would be, and I just start drawing in what I want for a hat. I'm just outside of that line and kind of follow it up, not real straight, not real smooth. And get them all the way up to the top of the wood, just at an angle like that. And then going to have the hat flopped over on the top. Okay, so from there, I want to use as much of this wood as we have and just kind of make a curve over there and start bringing it down. Oh, something like that. Okay, and then I'll draw that again with the pen. Now, it's the point of the hat is going to be over here. I'm going to flatten this off a little bit and make a ball on the end. And we'll start bringing this back up. And we'll go kind of narrow, and just as you come up, make this a little thicker as you come back to the main part of the hat. Okay, draw that part with the pen so you can see it. Okay, you can kind of see what our plan's going to be here, I suppose. Now come up just like we did on this side. We're using this dome-shaped head as a guide. We'll come out just a little bit wider and follow that shape up. And then we can cut it back up. This part here, when someone's hat flops over like that, it can be random wrinkles, bigger, wider. You can have it more of a tapered shape like this. You can have this fold over more. And maybe have this come up here. And then we'll cut this wrinkle in here. So let's this is kind of, like I said before, these lines are guidelines. It looks kind of goofy right now, but you got to remember this line doesn't have any cuts on it. That's going to look really nice. Okay, so let's stop there with the drawing, and let's get back to carving. Okay, the first thing I like to do, this area where we got to cut in from his cheeks into the side of his head, and then from the block of the wood to the hat, I really like to get aggressive there and just go after those, get in on those areas. So I'm going to come in here directly, see right at the bottom edge of this hat brim, just push my knife in there nice and deep and come up to it, break that piece out. And I'm going to do that kind of a scooping cut up to the bottom of that hat. Get another piece out of there. Scoop up to the hat, take it out. Do that 3 or 4 times. It doesn't take much and you got that shape coming at you. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other side, trying to keep everything somewhat symmetrical. Now we'll go above the hat. Do the same thing. You can come up all the way to the top, but I like to have more of a controlled deal when I'm doing this, so slip and cut off the hat. We will cut some of this off anyway, but just as a rule of thumb, kind of a good practice to do. Well, curve little scooping cuts and bringing off the chunks is a good way to work that edge over in a controlled manner. Now, we're over to the edge of the hat. All this up here is going to be waste. So now we can stick our knife in there and just break off a big chunk. And you see how just one cut got us pretty close. And then we'll just do some push cuts here and get a little closer to that line. And I'm not worrying about rounding it. I'm just getting kind of the side profile. Again, we're going for the shape, the general shape. Okay, see how we've notched in here to the side of the head, come up above the hat brim over to where the hat's going to be on top of the head and started bringing it up. Okay, now this is going to stick out way too far. So let's take some of that off, quite a bit of that. Just break it off like that. And because we want this to be as rounded as possible, after you break that off, I usually come in here and attack that top corner, bring that off a little bit, and then kind of round it. Okay? And that's just something I'll see how that brings it from sticking way out to actually curving around. Okay? Now over here, all this material up here above this part of the hat's a waste. So I'm going to make a nice clean cut right here on the ball. Like that. Just so I don't chance splitting that out at all. Nice and controlled. And okay, so now that I've got that clean notch there, kind of preserve that. Before I take this off, I want to just do the same below the ball here. I'll turn this around so you can see a little better. Just going to come right in the edge of the wood at an angle down towards that hat brim, the bottom of the ball, then cut straight in from the brim. And maybe we'll do that one more time. Okay, just to define that a little bit. Okay, now let's get, we can be aggressive up here. And this is kind of a fun cut to me. You just start and it starts to break free, splits it out. And then once it splits it out, you can turn your knife a little bit to follow that curve and it'll do it again. See how it kind of starts to split it? Well, that allows you to turn your knife without having a lot of pressure on there. And you just kind of keep doing that all the way around. Just kind of fun. Follow that up the line. Okay, now this next part, we gotta remember this line in here was just a reference line. This line out here is kind of where we want the outside of the hat to be. So this area in here is what we need to remove. Now the cleanest way that I've found to do that is, first of all, we'll go around and mark these lines, not super deep, angling away from what you want to save, and just kind of work your way around. Okay, I'll stop there, even though my line continues on. We'll use this other line to undercut it and make the wrinkle later. But first, let's just continue on here, cutting away from what you want to keep. I'm just using my thumb here to provide the little force it needs to get around there. Okay. And then don't forget to do that on the bottom as well. Basically just a nice clean cut line around what you want to remove. So here's kind of a tricky part. You need to pay attention to and kind of learn, you get a feel for, I guess, maybe is a way to say it, is when you come in to cut back the other way, you want to rely on the thickness of your knife, the angle of your cut, to help mechanically remove that piece of wood. What you don't want to do is push it in so deep this way that the tip of your knife is cutting into what you want to keep, because then you'll end up with all these cut lines on your finished piece. So staying away from there, see if I mark this where my finger is, and I go back in there, I'm getting pretty close, but I shouldn't be cutting into what I want to keep. And I can see this other cut line kind of breaking free. I come back this other way, kind of clean it up. That should come out of there. Now we did our stop cut on this side as well, angling it away from what we want to keep. We'll just go across it one more time here. Maybe a little deeper than we did before. Okay, and then we can, on this one, because it's so shallow, I run the risk of those cut marks if I come in this way. So what I like to do is just kind of come up to it and break it out like that. I just found that gives you a better chance of not digging into the wood you want to keep. Okay. Okay. So now we're getting that. Now, just to make this a little easier over here, if you look at this straight on, you know how we chopped this side off and rounded it? Well, this side's sticking out way too far. So let's come in here and we'll break off a piece of this. Something like that to start with. And left a straight side and a corner right here. Let's take that corner off. I always say cutting corners is a good thing when you're talking about wood carving. All right. We'll probably end up taking more of that off later. That's a place to start. Kind of curves it around. Okay, we'll come up here. Now that you can do this different ways, or to different degrees, I guess I should say there. What I've been doing lately is I kind of like having this separate from the hat. Like you can carve this so it's just kind of laying on there and then shape this part of it. But I just, the way it's coming up so tall and flopping over, I just imagine that this would be kind of dangling out here on the side of his head. So with that in mind, we're just going to keep going, work on going a little deeper here. A nice deep stop cut there, and we're going to pay attention to where our tip is. See how it's breaking that wood out, but we're not actually up to that point with the tip of our knife. Just the width of your blade and the angle it's going at, it'll just kind of break it and split it, similar to how it was when I was going around the corner here. Then you have a nice clean area. Even if you got a little piece in there to cut out later, that's better. You don't have cut marks up in here. Okay, I'll just round this piece over a little bit. If you look at this from the side, it doesn't look quite right. You got the head here, which is actually, if you think about how a hat is, it should kind of taper up and then taper up more towards the center. Here, everything's leaning forward. So let's take a minute now and just knock that all back. Okay, it's getting pretty close for the main part of the hat here. This I want to angle back even more. Okay, now you see how it kind of, there's a little more in the middle here. Now here's an example. I didn't follow my own rule that I've been talking about, not getting the detail right away. I started cutting in that fold over. Oh, it's gone now. That was really wasted effort, because I wasn't happy with the general shape. So let's get back to looking at that here. I like from the front and the side, looks pretty good. Let's push this side back over here a little bit more. Okay. Around this in here, we created kind of a ridge when we were pushing back. Now, this ball, we kind of want to make it more three-dimensional. I want it to be proud of this part of the hat. So I'm going to come along the top, make a stop cut, and cut back down into that. I'm going to go ahead and round some of these edges here. Top corner off, round that over. Just kind of generally rounding, shaping, smoothing. Okay. That's looking pretty good. It's maybe a little bit full right here. So how I drew that dome shape, maybe I want this side to kind of conform to his head a little bit more right here. And do a little bit of a scoop cut. And maybe do that across the front a little bit as well. See how that kind of, I think it's, you could kind of imagine that the hat, or his head right here, is making the hat a little more round, and then it kind of goes up and does its thing. Okay, now to just keep going with the hat, like I mentioned before, it's a little bit of a challenge, and you don't have to do this. You can certainly just leave it on top of the hat. But I think based on the side of the head coming up here and the hat curving in, I think we want to have that separate from his head. So if we follow this line up, and his head line, that reference line would have been right there. So now we need to work at removing more of this material. So keeping our knife angled away from there, we're going to go just outside of that a little bit. Keeping our knife angled away, we'll just walk it up here. And as you get to this end, maybe not cut in as deep. Okay, and then just continue cutting back here and around the ball. Try to keep your cuts as clean as possible. Some of these tighter areas, that can be kind of a challenge to do your best. The cleaner you make your cuts, just the less time it takes to clean things up later. You see how I just started into there, and then the pressure from the knife just kind of broke that wood off at the stop cut line. Oh, what I typically do on these tighter areas is I try to do kind of just like a series of triangle cuts, I guess. So takes out little pieces just with the point of the knife. Okay, just repeat those cuts till the piece is free, and then we get it out of there. You might have to go over them 2 or 3 times just to try to get everything to meet up here. But then you'll feel it come loose. It's loose in there, it's just got wedged in tighter. So we'll dig that out a little bit. On out of there. There we go. Okay, so we have that piece there. Now we can do a similar triangle cut here. And we have to be a little bit careful. There's not a lot of material here. We don't want to break our ball off. Come in here and kind of rock it, putting pressure towards the thicker part. Over here, jab it in, rock it, pulling pressure towards the thicker part, and then come in with your triangle, your last leg of the triangle. And again, if you have to repeat them, see how that gets down in there deep with a nice clean cut. Okay, then we'll just keep working that back in there. Just carefully removing that wood without cutting into what we want to save and leaving cut marks that are hard to get rid of. Okay, we'll follow that back in there. Make a couple passes. And come to this side, do the same. And after it gets really deep down in there and it gets hard to get to, on a piece like this, what I like to do is come over here from the other side, and I'll just start making little some triangle cuts there as well. Because if you can get through, then it makes it easier. You can't see that. If it gets, once you get through, then it gets easier to clean it out. I have a tiny little hole of daylight there. So we're going to come in, pull back in there. Same thing this direction. And make our little triangle cut, match it up. So now it starts to be a little easier to clean this out, because we can attack it from both sides. Now you can see here there's kind of a step here. I was being extra careful not to mark that up. So we need to come back in here and cut that a little bit more, a little closer. And we're past the halfway point, so we could actually start angling our knife the other way to work on wrapping it around. Let me know in the comments if you've been carving a while, if you have a better method of doing this. Now, you got these gouges and things like that make it, it could get in there easily and chip that out. For most of the time I've been carving, I think I've mentioned this before as well, I get a knife in my hand and I start carving, and I just into it. I don't think about setting that knife down and grabbing a different tool. Now, if I get too frustrated with something, I'll do that. But for the most part, I do a lot of what I do just with one knife. takes a little longer sometimes, and maybe it isn't as nice. I don't know. It's just how I do it. Now we don't want to go in there too deep, because the further you come back on your knife, the thicker it is, and the more of a wedge you'll have, and the more chance, more force you're putting sideways on your carving, be a good chance to break stuff out. We don't want to do that. Okay, I'm just going to carefully make little V cuts in there, cleaning that out as much as I can. Come in here from this side and help do that. Okay. I still would like to get around this ball, so let's go make kind of a curved V cut here. And there we got through. Now we can come in here and clean this edge up now. So, yeah, let me know in the comments. Do you guys knife only? Do you? I'm not against using other tools by any means. I was just kind of curious. Do you kind of get in the zone like I do, and got that knife in your hand and you're just making something? And we have this little ridge here. We're going to cut that off. Kind of smooth that back coming up this way. Just want to clean this out a little more down in here. Okay, now there's one stubborn little sliver there. Let's get him out of there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now we need to clean up this fold area up here. And we want to, well, let's bring this back a little bit. Maybe round it a little bit more here. And we're just doing some cleaning cuts. Okay. So we're getting close. Let's bring this in a little bit. One thing I think is kind of important when you're doing a carving like this is where the head comes up to the bottom of the hat should line up with where the head or the shape of the hat is above the brim. Just seems to make sense, right? So we have this side curved over nice. It's sticking out maybe a little too much yet. Take a little off of there and just kind of curve it around. Let's come in here, peel that back a little bit. Just kind of take some and compare. It's got to go more. We need to come a little bit more. Let's take this corner off that we just created. So we maintain that rounding around the head look. Getting pretty close. I think we'll take a little bit more off the back corner here. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. You can do, like I said, you could undercut this a little bit more if you like. Maybe I will a little bit. Just kind of make that deeper where it's folded over here. That. And how about we put a wrinkle in here? Maybe something here. Just kind of give it some character. Random wrinkles and folds. That looks pretty good. We could maybe bring one up here. We can do a little more rounding up here. It's kind of fine tuning things. Get rid of this ridge. Now this isn't a fully, isn't fully carved in the round, so you're gonna have it kind of just fall off. However, I do like to, on this back edge, just kind of chamfer a little bit, knock that sharp corner off. Just think it looks a little nicer. Okay, pretty happy with the hat, other than let's do a little rounding on this ball. Get rid of our pen line. Okay, I'm going to say his hat's done. Okay, now that we have the top of his head and the hat all done, I think that's looking really nice. Let's go ahead and focus on his face now. Now this looks a little goofy right now because, well, it is. So let's, just to even this out a little bit, let's knock this corner off here. Maybe bring this in a little more of an angle. We have kind of a straight edge here. We got off center a little bit, which is fine. We still have plenty of material here. We just got to keep that in mind. Round this a little bit, and then we'll just bring this side in just to kind of even things up. Okay, so this goofy Grinch here, before we get too carried away, I'm going to, his hat comes down here, or his head comes down here, and then those big cheeky, grinny cheeks start pushing out right away and come up way up beside his eyes. So let's create a center line for reference, roughly. And then somewhere about where these cheeks start coming out, let's draw a line across here. And what that's going to be is that's going to be kind of where the tops of his eyes are, his eyes kind of sit. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is do a little drawing. He's got kind of a scowling look. You know, it's one of the things, he was always just scowling, but he's got this evil looking grin on his face at the same time. So his eyebrows are pulled down in the center and bunched up. His cheeks are up and his eyes are kind of tucked back in there. So there's a lot going on right here in this area. I think it's important that we try to capture that. So down just a little bit from where the eyes are going to be, let's draw in a nose. We'll do a curved line like this for the top of his nose. And then we'll just kind of make that into an oval. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come up from the bottom on that oval, out to the side, and back up before we get to the top of the nose. So we're come up from the bottom and out, and back up, like that. Okay. Now we're going to leave a little bit of a space here above the nose so we can kind of push that back in there. Then these big scowly eyebrows start happening. And we're just going to come in here, make a curved line up towards his forehead, and do the same on this side. Okay. And that's going to hook around, come back up sharp like this. Okay, that's the really scowling, really pulling those eyebrows in and down. Okay, then we'll arch these a little bit more. Okay, and then from about the bottom corner of the nose, or the smile line, or the scowl line on Mr. Grinch here, we're going to kind of do a up, and the cheeks are pushing up, and follow a similar line here out to the side. I'm going to do that on both sides. Okay, those are his cheeks pushed up from this great big sinister grin he's got. Okay, and then right at the end of that, we're going to draw in these upside down curves. That's going to be like the top, the corners of his mouth. He's really pushing that grin up there. He's up to something. I know he is. Okay, we'll do that on both sides. And then we're going to bring this down for his mouth. Okay, and then we're going to come down from these smile, or the corners of his smile, and we're going to actually curve out just a little bit right at the beginning. And then we're going to make this big sweeping curve. It flattens out a little bit. and then towards the center, kind of bring it down to a bit of a point. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing here. Out just a little bit. Big sweeping curve. And bring it to a point in the center. Okay. Now the eyes are going to be set down in here. We're going to want the cheeks to be kind of popping out. We want this mouth area to be back just a little bit. So before we draw the lines, well, we could, so let's go ahead and draw the eyes in here as well. So this will be kind of the nose area here. And we want this to be cut deep here. And his eyes are going to kind of come down. His cheek is actually covering some of his eye. And then we're going to come up like this to a bit of a point. Kind of evil looking eye. And notice that comes right up to this line. Over here, we want to do about the same. Okay, it comes down here along the edge of the nose. Kind of into the cheek a little bit. Just barely. And then come up to here. Looks like we got that a little bit low. Okay, something like that. Now, we got to think about what we're going to have to push back. By that I mean what sticks out the most. And we're going to have his nose and the cheeks be kind of the most prominent features here. So we got to push almost everything else back. I'm going to mark the corners of his mouth here. I'm going to kind of cut in here just so we don't lose where we're at with that. Just take in this upside down half moon shape here. Okay, we'll do that on this side. Kind of got it splitting out here. A little deeper. Okay, now let's bring this back on here, because remember we want the cheeks to stick out the most. Let's knock a little bit more of this corner off of here. Okay, so let's push the top of the cheeks in, kind of create these eye sockets. Okay, so we're gonna come along the edge of the nose, angling away from the nose, cut down beside the nose to like where the top of the cheek is. Going to angle up. We're going to follow that cheek line we drew back over here to the edge. And from the top, come underneath that brow, angling in. Okay. Now we're just going to kind of come up to those stop cuts and cut that back in a little bit. Because we want the eyes set in the head. We want the cheeks sticking out. Okay. Now we're going to cut on this inside here. We're going to go ahead and make this a nice deep triangle cut into where the corner of the eye will be. Okay. I think that will give us a nice spot to work on an eye at. Okay, now I'll repeat that process on the other side. And we have, you can see how our cheeks are kind of coming out. We cut down below here where the mouth is going to be. We could even go a little bit more. Push that chin back underneath a little bit and make his cheeks stand out a little more. Okay. Where were we? Get distracted here. Okay, now let's do the same thing over here. Remember, we started by angling away from the nose. That's looking pretty good. And we can cut in these scowl lines, frown lines. And we'll come in on the bottom of these and we'll push back kind of the bridge of the nose. Do a little triangle cut there. Kind of an ugly spot right here. Clean that up a little bit. Okay, we can round this cheek. Before we get too carried away with the cheeks, let's go and mark out our nose. I'm going to start by not going super deep. just so we can kind of get it defined here. Okay, come up underneath it a little bit. And we'll go a little deeper on this triangle cut for the nose. And we'll have to round these, split these, and round them off a little bit. And make some nice deep cuts here next to the nose. And we'll go underneath the nose, nice and deep. Okay, that's starting to take shape. Now we're going to just round the top edge of the nose a little bit, get rid of our pencil lines, and come in here next to these side pieces and just make a little tiny V cut. And I like to round the edges and get rid of my pencil lines, stuff like that, of course. Okay, we'll bring this underneath the nose down just a little bit, around the top of the cheeks. Okay, you can kind of see we have the cheeks sticking out now. A little bit of a, we need to take some off here for below the nose, so our nose sticks out. And the nose doesn't stick out very much, but I think we need to have a little bit. And bring it across to this side. And around this other cheek. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. This cheek might be, need to come down a little bit right by the nose. Let's create a little bit more of a separation here. We are getting close. Oop. Knife started digging in there. Just kind of shaping these scrunched up brow lines here. They look a little thick. Okay, so let's start at the point because I want that up a little bit higher. A bit of curve like this. Almost curving up just a little bit. Back down. And then a big old curve out like that. Too much of a curve. Just keep playing with this till you get it right, I guess, until it looks right. Okay. Now we're going to take our knife and pick one of those 37 lines you have drawn there and follow that around. Not real deep, nice and smooth, angling down to towards the inside of the mouth. And we'll just do that all the way around. Turning around, down this way. Okay, and we're going to come on the other side and just finish out that little V cut. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, need to get some eyeballs in there and finish this guy up. The eyes are kind of tucked in, like the cheeks are pushing up under the eyes or over the eyes. So we want to come in here, make a matching set of curved inside edges of the eye. And we're going to maybe have it come up over, so it's under the cheek a little bit, and then taper up here. We'll cut into the corner of the eye a little bit deeper. Cut along that top line, kind of up underneath. And we'll come down, angling out. Over the top of the cheek. We'll cut back in. And we need to get in this little corner down here, which is kind of hard to do. It's got a little too much sticking out here on these brow lines. Doesn't look quite right to me. I'm going to flatten those out a little bit. Okay, well, we got to get this other eye carved in there. Let's add a few more little details here. Let's put some wrinkles in his forehead. Just make some V cuts at different shapes here, sizes. Okay. And then gonna break my rule, and it's not a rule, but instead of usually just get a knife and keep going. I'm gonna grab a small gouge. This is a number 11, and I think it's like a 2mm or 1.5mm, number 11. And I'm just gonna, well, before I do that, kind of soften the edges of this hat. Just kind of come around here, round it over, a little uneven here and there is fine. Just don't like the sharp edge. Okay, do that on the top and the bottom. There, see how that looks just a little softer, a little more rounded. Okay, I'm going to take this little veiner and I'm just going to randomly come in here and just make little divots. Turning different angles, going different depths, different lengths. Jumping around, just make it as random as you can. And after of kind of just randomly doing this, I look for spots that I missed and I go in there and fill those in. I think that looks pretty good. A little cut mark up here I want to get rid of. Just kind of go around doing a little cleanup you can see. Okay, one last little touch here. Take this V tool and we're going to put some lines in this ball. Okay, I'm just going to put a little oil on this guy and wrap this thing up. Just want to take a second to mention if you need a cut resistant glove, or if you want to get your hands on a Badger State Blades knife, go ahead and check out our website, huntersmake.com. We're pretty well stocked up there, and if you know somebody that needs a new knife for Christmas or something, be a good time to get it ordered. We also have some mugs and t-shirts, and we can do some custom printing too. If you have a clever wood carving saying or something you want on a t-shirt and you're not sure where to get it, just let me know. Go to our website. We got a place you can fill out a form and put your design idea and stuff on there, and we can get them made for you. Now that it's kind of getting into winter is definitely settling in. Our temperatures are dropping, and we've had a couple snowfalls already. My projects that I've been hustling on all fall and summer that's kept me away from carving, those are going to have to be, most of that's going to have to be finished up in the springtime. So I have plenty of time to be doing some carving coming up, making some more videos for you. And I'll ask in return, I guess, for making these videos is giving me a like and a subscribe, and share them with your friends, get the word out. If there's anything that you would like to see, you'd like to see me do a video on, I've got I've got some things I'm working on and have some videos coming out pretty soon. But it's like hearing from you guys, see what's going on, and let me know what you think of this Grinch. I think he turned out pretty good. It's kind of a mean-looking old Grinch, but I think that's in the song, isn't it? Anyway, there you have it. Thanks for watching.